He can't miss. Derrick White goes crazy. 9 threes and 33 points versus the Heat. 129-116. Imagine turning on the game thinking it's going to be just another normal night, and out of nowhere a guy starts not making any mistakes. Have you ever been through this? Your team is in the game, you blink, and the opponent launches a sequence that kills any hope. That's the pain. You feel like you have nothing to do. But today, there's a solution. In 30 seconds, I'll show you how Derrick White destroyed the Heat. There were 9 three-pointers and 33 points, play-by-play, and what that changed in the game until 129-116. Do you want to see this madness? Before the first highlight, sign up now because here we don't miss any absurd performances like this. And leave a like, seriously, because if you like the NBA, this video will give you exactly what you came for. Now quickly, which team are you from? Celtics or Heat? Comment below because I'll pin the craziest comments. And activate the bell so you don't depend on the algorithm. When a game of this level comes up, you'll receive it instantly. Did it close? So stay with me until the end, because the last string of threes is surreal. You're going to want to see how it ended. If you watch the Celtics versus Heat at TD Garden that Friday night, I'm pretty sure you experienced at least one of these feelings. First, that normal suspicion of a big game. Okay, it's going to be tough. Then, a certain discomfort when Miami starts to bother the way it always does. And finally, the feeling of seeing something rare. One of those games where logic takes a break and the story chooses a protagonist who wasn't in the main script. Today, on the Celtics Talk Show, I want to talk to you about this calmly, as we would after a game like this. Not just repeating numbers, but understanding what they mean. Because, yes, Derrick White scored a season-high 33 points and made 9 three-pointers, a number that, even in the age of long-range shooting, still sounds like that's not common. And the final score, 129-116, shows a Celtics that didn't just win, they opened up a lead at the right time and made it clear that when the attack finds a rhythm, it's difficult for anyone to hold back. But let me start from the beginning. Why was this game so heavy? The context that changes everything. We don't talk about Celtics x Heat as if it were just another match. There is memory here, there is wound, and there is learning. Miami has this almost irritating talent of turning games into a kind of test of patience. They cut off your spaces, make your reads difficult, make you work for every possession, and just when you think you're comfortable, they change a play and force you to think again. It's a team that demands maturity, especially during a long season when it's easy to fall into automatic mode. And Boston was coming off 2 defeats. 2. Not the end of the world, but enough to spark that silent warning. What is the answer? Because a big team is not one that never stumbles. A great team is the one that reorganizes itself quickly and shows on the court that it learned from the stumble. That's exactly what happened. And the answer came with the look of the modern Celtics. 3-point shooting, movement, decision speed, and above all, the figure of a player who tends to make the game simpler for everyone around him. Derrick White, the night he took center stage. Derrick White has a type of impact that often doesn't scream. It appears in detail, a pass reading that avoids a counterattack, a well-timed defensive help, an unexpected block from a point guard, an extra ball that becomes a free throw. He makes the team work. And when a player like that has a night where, in addition to doing all of this, he also becomes a relentless goal scorer, then you are watching something special. 33 points. 11 shots converted in 20 attempts. And what draws the most attention? 9 of 14 on 3-pointers. This is more than everything fell apart. This is volume with efficiency. That's rhythm, confidence, shot selection, and most importantly, repetition. He didn't hit 3 in a row and stop. He continued. And every time it continued, the Heat needed to react. And reacting against Boston is always dangerous, because when you change your defense to hold a specific point, you open up space for another. What I like most about this type of game is that it helps us see a truth about basketball that sometimes goes unnoticed. It's not just about who scores, it's about where the point comes from. And White's 3-pointers weren't all the same. Some came in catch and shoot, others in transition, others with a small creation of their own, using the advantage generated by a delayed rotation. In other words, he was reading the game at the same level he was shooting well, and there's a detail that I consider even more impressive. White wasn't just attacking. He filled the match with defensive impact as well. There were times when he appeared to put out fires. It's a type of performance that can hardly be summed up as he had the hot hand. His game is more complete than that. Jaylen Brown, constancy that gives support. Now, I need to talk about Jaylen Brown because even when he's not the scorer, he continues to be one of the emotional and technical anchors of this team. He finished with 30 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists. That's a statistical line from a player who isn't just scoring, it's also holding the game's weight in several areas. And here comes an important point. Brown's consistency, game after game, makes nights like Derrick White's even more valuable because when you have a constant offensive reference, the opposing defense needs to pay attention to it, and this creates space for the second, third, fourth player to hurt. It's a huge difference compared to teams that depend on a single creator and live off the cuff. Brown often plays the role of the player who absorbs contact, who enters the paint, who gives the Celtics points when the ball is not falling from outside, and when, on a night like this, the ball falls out of bounds in historic volume, the result tends to appear on the scoreboard. More than the 30 points, I like the balance of his game. Rebounds in important moments, assists that show reading and not stubbornness. And that, for me, speaks to the maturity of this squad. When the game asks for something, the Celtics have responded with flexibility. The most underrated player in the league. There's a quote that caught a lot of attention after the game. Erik Spoelstra, Heat coach, said that Derrick White is the most underrated player in the league. I understand why. For many people, an underrated player is one who doesn't have the spotlight. But in White's case, it's more specific. He's someone who does things that don't see a video cut in every play, but that change the game in a real way. And when the opponent himself, one of the NBA's most respected coaches, says it out loud, it's as if he's saying, you guys might not be paying enough attention to what a problem this guy is. The night of 9. 3 balls is the kind of performance that forces casual audiences to look. But those who follow it more closely already knew. Derrick White, for some time now, has been among the most valuable players in the sense of total impact. He scores, defends, organizes, spaces the court, and makes good decisions. And basketball, deep down, rewards those who consistently make good decisions. A place in Celtics history, and why it matters. There is a statistical detail that I really like because it is not empty statistics. Derrick White became the first player in Celtics history to record, in a single game, at least 30 points, 9 three-pointers, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, and 4 blocks. I know. When we read a list like this, it seems like that mix of numbers that someone invented to sound special. But here the point is not the list itself. The point is what it reveals. A point guard with elite three-point volume, who at the same time protects the rim as a big defender on several possessions, and also participates in the offensive organization. That's a rare combination. It doesn't happen by chance. And his reaction when he found out about this brand was perfect, because it shows his personality. He joked, as if to say, put that somewhere so I can believe it. And at the same time, he recognized the value of being part of the history of a franchise like the Boston Celtics. This mix of humility and awareness is something that suits the way he plays. What this game says about the Celtics, besides the score. Now let's move away from Derrick White did this and get into what this means for the Celtics. First, beating the Heat by opening up a lead in the second half is a message of maturity. Miami specializes in games that stay tight until the end, in forcing mistakes, in making you play at the limit of your patience. When the Celtics manage to increase the distance at a time when the opponent normally grows, it is because the team found solutions, whether moving the ball more quickly, choosing shots better, or controlling the defensive transition. Second, this game reinforces the Celtics' identity as a team that can win in many ways. If Jason Tatum isn't the protagonist of the night, that's okay. If Brown needs to be the engine for a sequence, he can do it. If White becomes the top scorer and still has an impact defensively, the team grows. This multiplicity is vital for playoffs, where the opponent tries to take away your first option and force you to live off the second and third. Third, collective trust. I always say here on the channel, confidence in basketball is contagious when it is accompanied by good decisions. A difficult ball that falls can cheer up, but it can also tempt the team to shoot anyway. What I saw in this match was confidence with discipline. The Celtics kept moving, kept finding the best shot possible, and that makes all the difference. The Derrick White effect on offense. There is an interesting discussion about how the Celtics become more dangerous when Derrick White is aggressive, because he is, by nature, a player who can choose to be a connector, the one who keeps the wheels turning, or he can choose to be a direct threat. When it's just connecting, it's already valuable, but when he decides to attack consistently, the defense needs to move more. And then things happen. Help arrives late, the closeout turns into a desperate run, the rotation opens up a corridor, and the Celtics, with the number of shooters and finishers they have, turn that into points. This type of game, for me, is not just a pretty best mark of the season story. It's also a strategic reminder. If Derrick White continues to add offensive aggression to his defensive package, the Celtics' ceiling will rise. And from now on, a performance like this always raises the question, can he keep it up? And I think the right way to look at it is not to expect 9 three-pointers again. This is rare. The question is, can he maintain the level of aggression, reading, and confidence to remain a real threat throughout the match? Because if he maintains this spirit, attacking when there is space, shooting with conviction when he is free, and punishing any wrong rotation, the Celtics gain an offensive layer that makes life very difficult for the opponent. And at the same time, he doesn't lose what he always was, a defender who changes possessions with intelligence and timing. The next challenge, as mentioned after that game, was to face the Toronto Raptors. And this is also interesting because it is the type of match in which the post-historical night focus is tested. After a highlight game, it's easy to slip into that subtle relaxation. Consistent teams don't do that. Consistent teams turn a great game into fuel, not accommodation. To close, what I want you to take away from this episode, if I had to sum it up in one sentence, I would say this. The Celtics beat the Heat because it was more than a talented team. It was a well-organized team, with multiple protagonists, and with a Derrick White in historic mode. And honestly, it's hard not to feel a certain pride when you see a player like White, who does so many things that don't always make headlines, have a moment like this. Not just for him, but for what it represents. A cast where brilliance doesn't always have to come from the same place. A team where, when an opponent tries to close the door of the first option, the second opens, the third appears, and the ball finds the right path. Now I really want to hear from you. When did you realize that that night was Derrick White's? Was it on the third ball of 3, on Thursday? Or was it at that moment when the Heat seemed ready to pull over and he responded in the most cruel way possible, with another long ball that silenced any reaction? Right here in the comments. What was the move that stuck in your head? And if you like this type of more human analysis, more of a conversation, looking at the game beyond the clip, stay here on the Celtics Talk Show. Because when the Celtics play like this, it's not just a victory, it's something for us to enjoy, break down, and remember. And yes, 9 threes from a point guard who still protects the rim as if he were a defensive wing. This doesn't happen every day. Today, it happened. And we were here to see it. And that's why this 129-116 isn't just another victory this season. It's a message. It's the type of game that changes the mood, repositions confidence, and reminds everyone of what this squad is capable of when it clicks. Derrick White didn't just have an inspired night. He put TD Garden in "this is going to happen anyway" mode, dismantled Miami through repetition, and still did it with a defensive impact, the kind that doesn't just show up on the scoreboard. Now, if you've made it this far, I want to ask you a direct question. What does this game tell you about this team's ceiling when the ball starts falling and the defense remains tight? Because for me, the message is clear. When the Celtics find rhythm and don't get disorganized, it's not just difficult, it's suffocating. So do the following. Don't let this content die here. In the pinned comment, I left the playlist Celtics Analysis. That's where I break down game by game, adjustment by adjustment, so you can understand what really happens on the court, without noise and without fuss. Click on the playlist now. Choose the next video and stay with me, because this season sequence is exactly where the answers appear. And before you leave in the comments what Derrick White's best three-pointer was for you, and if you think he really is the most underrated guy in the league. We'll see you in the next video. And remember, when Boston plays with this P decision, the problem is not winning. It's up to the opponent to survive.